Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with CommPartners. This is our Facebook Live that we bring to you once a month to talking about all the different things learning management system-wise that CommPartners offers, virtual events. And this week we welcome Aidan Augustin from Feathr, and we're going to talk about all things digital marketing. Have a quick chat about virtual events, maybe touch on hybrid events because that's on everybody's minds. And feel free to leave your location, where you're from. We'd love to hear, and any questions you might have about virtual events. So welcome, Aidan.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Let me do a little introduction for you. So Aidan is a co-founder and president of Feathr, an industry-leading tech company building marketing tools specifically tailored to the needs of association and event organizers. Feathr has helped over 800 associations and 5,000 conferences, trade shows, and virtual events grow attendance, member engagement, and digital sponsorship revenue. Based out of their Gainesville, Florida headquarters, Aidan leads the sales and marketing functions of Feathr and spearheads industry engagement. He is an actively involved member of both ASAE and IAEE and a regular speaker on the topics of digital marketing and event association technology. So welcome, Aidan. So tell us a little bit more about Feathr. That was just kind of like a high-level overview.
Sure. So, we're a software company. We make marketing software specifically, and we only work with associations and event organizers. So this is what we do, right? Most people know Feathr for what we do with digital advertising. So that's the most popular product module that we offer. Is we just make it really easy for associations or event organizers to do like the targeted social ads that show up in Facebook and Instagram news feeds, or retargeting with banner ads that kind of chase your members around the web to try to get them to come back and register for an event or subscribe, or take a continuing education online offering that you might be offering. So so we have a number of different tools: website analytics, targeted digital advertising, and then we have like an influencer marketing tool to make use of speakers and board members and sponsors for that matter. So influential people or influential companies that are already stakeholders in a conference or stakeholders in an association. We have a tool that makes it easy to help them kind of amplify a message out on social media and then track how many people come through. So that's the quick overview. Yes, like I mentioned, we work with about 800 associations currently.
Mm-hmm. Good number.
Nice. That's what we do. Digital marketing geeks. That's what we are.
I hear ya. I'm one too. Speaking of me, so my name is Rebecca, and I am the digital marketing specialist at CommPartners. So thank you again. So we would love to know, like I said, where everybody's from. If you are a marketing team of one, or do you head a marketing team? Are you a manager? Are you just somebody that's interested in learning more about your digital marketing? So please leave a comment and let us know a little bit more about you. So Aidan, let's talk about, so things have changed, obviously, which we know. We are everyone's still pretty much, I would say majority is doing some virtual events. I've only seen a few associations that are doing live events. They seem to be very small. So we were talking earlier how there was this very quick change to, you have to, you were live and oh my gosh, all of a sudden now I'm going virtual. So what trends have you seen that have been really good with making that change? Like, what have you seen that people how are they communicating? Are there like email marketing, ads? Like you've talked just a little bit about ads. So when people had to make that big change, and some people still may have to do another change again if they're trying to plan next year for live. So what kind of trends are you seeing? What are you seeing that's working?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, people are spending a lot more time online right now, right? I don't think that's very surprising, but it's important to really internalize that. Already entering 2020, we had record-breaking amounts of time spent online, an average of 7 hours a day for U.S. adults, and that was in 2019, before the pandemic. But now, most estimates are showing that there's 20 to 30 to even 40% increase in web traffic and time spent online and time spent on internet-connected devices. So your members, your potential attendees, they're spending more time online. So it would follow that beefing up your online communication, whether that's specific channels or creating more accessible online content or more programs that can be accessible online, things like what you help your clients do at CommPartners. That's really important right now, especially as it looks pretty likely we're going to be in this situation for another 12 to 18 months. So that's the first thing, is just like, so everyone's spending so much more time online, and also with people not working at offices, a number of traditional marketing channels are less effective. So many publications that were delivered to places of work are not getting nearly as much readership or circulation, with some of those offices empty or sparsely populated. So advertising in print magazines right now is not considered as effective. Direct mail, similarly, a lot of direct mail that was B2B marketing or professional oriented marketing was sent to places of work as well. So again, that's a less reliable channel. And even cold calling, whether that was cold calling, knocking on doors, or cold calling, picking up the phone, similarly. So those are three like very traditional B2B marketing channels: direct mail, print advertising, and cold calling. And all three of those are significantly less effective and remain so during the pandemic. So from a marketing standpoint, those are some trends we're seeing, and particularly amongst associations, those three were often very key parts of an attendee acquisition marketing plan or membership engagement plan. So on the flip side, because people are spending more time online, there are increased opportunities around content, around email marketing, if done well, around digital advertising, if that's not something you were doing before. We're seeing a lot of increase in that activity now. And then one kind of interesting nuance around digital advertising is that digital advertising is actually cheaper now than it was before the pandemic. And that's because even though, well, actually, part of it's supply and demand, there is more supply because there are more people online, more time spent online, and there's more advertising opportunities to get in front of them. So that makes it lower cost, but also, and because there's this backdrop of economic uncertainty, some of the largest brands, the huge consumer brands that spend a lot of money on paid advertising, have reduced their overall spend just because of the kind of recessionary backdrop. And so there's both an increase in supply from an advertising inventory standpoint, and a slight decrease in demand. It was very stark at first. A lot of it's come back, but not all of it by any means. So that actually means it's more bang for your buck to do digital advertising now than pre-pandemic. So, those two things combined, with people spending more time online, it being cheaper to reach them there, we're seeing a lot more adoption of retargeting and social advertising and other things in the programmatic targeted digital advertising realm.
Yes, it's funny. About the digital advertising, because predominantly, from my experience, digital marketing can become very expensive because people just want to put all their eggs in their baskets. But really now I feel like people are taking a look and actually seeing, I feel like, because like you said, so many people are online now, it's much easier to watch your competitors because they're right in front of you. So I think it's a lot, that's kind of neat also, that you're kind of really able now to see what your competitors are doing, since they are marketing very, right in front of you, social media and things like that, and ads. So it's very easy to retarget a lot of those things. So yeah, very true. So let's, and also, like I said, if anybody has any questions, please leave them in the chat and we will take care of those, answering those. So some things obviously that have changed is so we talked a little bit about getting like marketing, like kind of maybe getting your word out. What about planning when it comes to like maybe planning an event? How do you see things have changed when it comes to like a little bit more specifically about how would you get like stakeholders and sponsors and things like that? That's a little bit different because that has definitely changed also. Their offerings have had to change. A lot of them now have to do, and I have also seen those prices have really gone down also, which is, which is understandable. So can you tell me a little bit more about that? What do you think about when it comes to
absolutely. I think at this point, it's definitely become clear that it's much harder as an event organizer to monetize a virtual conference or a virtual annual meeting at the same rate that an in-person was. But at the same time, I think the further along we get in this process, we're seeing more and more innovation around that. So how can you provide a compelling and engaging and valuable sponsor experience through a virtual environment? And at first, I think there was a lot of uncertainty and panic around that. But now we're seeing a lot of pretty interesting ideas come to the fore. So I can share a couple of those if you think that would be of interest. So one is, I think there's a great opportunity to really do a pre, during, post unified sponsorship package now. And that was a best practice that was starting to make its way pre-pandemic, but just with the virtual event, I think it ties together just a little bit easier because you can have a digital marketing pre-component that leads directly into the virtual event itself, and a post-event component, and you can have it trackable, and you can use some some of the same segmentation that we'd use on the targeting on the front end. Then you can use some of the data of what did people do during the virtual event, which sessions did they attend and things like that to enable a post-event, finally targeted digital marketing campaign on behalf of a sponsor. So in that case, you're essentially offering digital marketing almost as a service, but turning it into a sponsorship package so that a sponsor is getting this pre-event and post-event digital marketing campaign from their event sponsorship. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to do some interesting things there. You can do it, email blasts. That's tried and true. There's also a lot of downsides of selling sponsored email blasts, but in that same vein, but for example, talking about digital advertising, you can run a sponsored ad retargeting campaign, which would be, as the event organizer, you would run a retargeting campaign just on behalf of one of your sponsors or one of your exhibitors. So they would give you the ads and you would run a campaign targeting your registered attendees. But for the 4 weeks leading up to the virtual conference, those attendees would be seeing ads follow them around from a specific sponsor. And those ads could actually be co-branded. They could say hey, we're looking forward to seeing you in 2 weeks at the virtual conference. We're proud to be the main sponsor. Click here to schedule a one-on-one meeting with us or whatever it might be. And then similarly, post-event, you could have a different message, right? Some kind of lead nurturing or call to action oriented. So, pre-event, post-event ad retargeting campaigns, pre-event, post-event, email marketing, pre-event and post-event. You can do things with social media shout outs, and some of those can be trackable as well. And that also lends brand credibility if an association's official social media is giving a spotlight thank you to a specific sponsor. It's a little bit more work, but for at least larger sponsors, you can consider doing a spotlight write-up, a little blog post, or a little interview or something like that. So on the front end leading up to the virtual conference, you kind of one week or something, spotlight a different partner and post several times on social media and link back to this article and kind of spotlighting something interesting about that organization. And then back that up again with either email or ad retargeting efforts. So anyway, that's some of the interesting ideas we're seeing happen around virtual event sponsorships. I think it's definitely become clear that the trade show format is really difficult to replicate on a virtual conference with learning sessions and so forth. I think a lot of pieces that translate actually fairly naturally to a virtual event. I think a lot of the stuff you're doing over at CommPartners, shows that very well. But definitely on the trade show side, it's a little bit more difficult to replicate that. So I have not seen a good execution really of a virtual trade show yet, but I've heard of a few that I haven't been able to witness in person that are turning it into more of an extended marketplace, 4 weeks or even 8 weeks long, where there's a virtual platform that you can set up meetings and so forth, but it's not trying to replicate the 2-day experience. It's creating kind of an extended virtual marketplace. So I'm curious to see how those formats pan out. I don't know if you've seen anything on that side out of curiosity.
We actually did attend one or two like that just because we were a sponsor from an event that did something similar to that. So it was kind of neat. It was kind of like a virtual world. You could hold meetings, that type of thing. CommPartners, what we do on Elevate, our LMS, we could host virtual conferences. We really try to make very robust exhibit halls full of lots of information, as much information our sponsors can give us. Our attendees and sponsors can give us, not attendees, sponsors. So, or people that are presenting. So we do everything from posters and videos, as many as links as they want to, just different things like that. Chat, people can chat with, they'll have live office times. Like you said, people can come in and chat, different things like that. So that's definitely something that we encourage of the virtual exhibit hall, because that's the closest at this time, that you're going to kind of get to a trade show. But yeah, it's kind of neat because, like you said, it's interesting to do it right there from your house.
Yeah.
Some of the things I've also seen is podcasts. People are using their podcast to kind of, if they have one, to lead up to that moment. Their virtual conference, like you said, about doing videos and things like that. People I've seen using podcasts to interview sponsors. Get the word out about them. They can kind of populate that everywhere. Same thing.
Right.
I've also seen people that have, since you're not somewhere having lunch, usually virtual conferences, sometimes you'll get lunch or dinner served, that type of thing. I've seen vouchers for Grubhub and some different places like that get sent out. So people can have their lunch ordered if they're doing something specific, maybe a specific networking event, that type of thing that can be sponsored by one of your stakeholders and things like that. So yeah,
Interesting.
Yeah, so I've seen a few things that kind of neat. I've seen some virtual swag bags that are really cool that have been sent out. Sometimes that link up to coupons or link up to free products from all your different sponsors that you just fill out a form and you get a free product sent to you. So yeah, there's some unique things that are happening.
It's funny you mentioned the Grubhub gift card thing. That's something that we've done individually as a sponsor, but we had not been like offered the chance to sponsor formally via the organizer. You know, like a lunch where everybody would get one. But totally makes sense. The same idea. We've just done that individually. Like we'll reach out to people, you know, right before an event and offer to buy them lunch, just like you might do so in person, and say we'll send you a gift card if you take a demo with our team or something like that. But that's.
Yeah. We've even seen some. We had we did a conference for a client, and we've seen people do like real like swag bags and send them out and fill them up with. And this was a lot of work, they said, which I can only imagine because they had a lot of attendees. But they created boxes and they asked all their sponsors as much. We're going to send these out. I think they did it like for the first 200 people that registered. They asked their sponsors to send them 200 products if they could, and they filled the boxes, wrote handwritten notes, which I thought was really cool, and sent them out to everybody, the first 200 people that registered. So I thought that was a really cool idea. So
a conference that we just sponsored recently did that with, it was a smaller event, so it was right around 200 people, but they had some partnership with a craft gin distillery that was in the city where it was supposed to be. This is one that, you know, had to pivot virtual, but to still, you know, incorporate that partnership, which that location of the gin distillery was supposed to be, I think, one of their receptions. And because that couldn't happen, they mailed a bottle of that gin to every attendee, and then had the owner like do a mixology class during one of the receptions. And Feathr was the sponsor of that activation. So that was a kind of fun way to both give a nod to the local aspect of where at least the event was going to be, and then also, you know, provide a fun like sponsorable asset and an experience for the attendees. So we've seen some iterations around that.
Yeah, 100%. And it was very smart for them to think, okay, we're no longer live. What can we do that can still bring an experience? Because that's a lot of what I think people feel like they're missing out on, obviously, is the experience behind a virtual event when they're virtual versus a live event. I feel like that's what they're missing. And we've seen some really cool things within conferences with people creating experiences. And that's another great thing to you spoke a little bit about this, about influencers. So so let's talk a little bit about influencers.
Sure.
You can use them with your marketing. A lot of times you can, you know, you have a celebrity MC, you really want to promote that, or you have, you know, your big name sponsors, you're creating socials for them, having them promote you as much as they can, social sharing. So those are some of my ideas. What do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of things that would fall under influence marketing have actually been done, you know, in the conference trade show world for a long time, just, you know, by a different name, perhaps, right? So, you know, getting exhibitors to try to invite their customers or their lists to attend the trade show, right? And that's been a tried and true trade show marketing mechanism. You know, it used to be send them physical tickets for them to distribute, right? And then it became send them promo codes. But as influencer marketing, it became so popular in the consumer world around social media, and some new best practices emerged there. You know, there's kind of an interesting opportunity to leverage what has worked in the past for the conference and trade show world. Same idea with speakers, right? It's been pretty common for conferences to ask speakers, hey, can you share something on your social media? But now, you know, there's, I think, a more clear set of best practices emerging that can be applied here. So like a couple of the things I would recommend would be coordinating the push. So you know, you have, well, first off, as an association, by definition, like you have, you know, influencers of your industry as stakeholders, right? You have members that have been members for a long time that are high up at their respective organizations, that are well connected and networked in the industry. You have experts that are thought leaders, right? The people who contribute to the blog, the people who run the continuing education, the people who speak at the conferences, right? So you have thought leaders, you have industry executives, you have active, you know, industry participants as members, you have volunteer leadership, right? Your boards and your committees and so forth. So these are all people who presumably have lots of LinkedIn connections in the industry, you know, that you serve, right? And then that's even before talking about sponsors. You know, the same applies there. So, you know, the core concept is just, can you get them all to share the fact that they're attending this event, or And you can use this also for membership drives or for promoting continuing education and certification opportunities too. But just to keep the virtual conference example, can you get all of the speakers to share, ideally on the same day or certainly the same week, onto their LinkedIn's or whatever social platforms you find most relevant for your audience. Get them all to share, ideally with a similar message around the same time period, but also with something that's trackable to them. And that's where Feathr comes in. We're not the only tool that does this, but we make it easy to generate a unique, not just link, but also a full unique vanity landing page for every speaker and for every sponsor, so that they have something to share that's, like mine would be my headshot, my session time, my session title, my bio, and the rest of the landing page would be about the virtual conference, but it would just kind of be like spotlighting my session front and center. So like each speaker gets this microsite that spotlights their session, but then they share it to LinkedIn saying, come see me speak, see you next month, and then people can click through from there to register for the event. But the advantage of that, not only is it because from a vanity standpoint, you get more participation typically from speakers and from sponsors when they're sharing something that's a little bit self-promotional along with the event, but also it's trackable. So you can see which speaker, which sponsor drove the most. It allows you to run contests or incentives, or just to track engagement, and then potentially nudge the people who haven't shared yet to share, because you can see the fact that they haven't shared. You can see and also like one share generally is not enough. Now sometimes that's all you can get, but if you can get 2 coordinated pushes, one everybody pushes this week, and then a week or 2 later you do kind of a second wave. Those are the 2 main things. The coordination of it and the tracking of it, I think, are the things we've seen make the biggest difference, versus just kind of like hoping and hoping everybody shares.
Yeah, we use referral links, and I am somewhat obsessed with them because I love seeing like where everybody is coming from, because also what's working, what's not working.
That's right.
If you see that people are pushing stuff out, but it's not, you're not getting clicks on those links or registrations, and that probably something might need to be tweaked for your next virtual conference, or if you're still in the planning phases, you can go ahead and make those adjustments now. And I really like what you said about people that are really involved in your association. Within Elevate, we are able to see and run reports who is the most, like you said, the most active, contributes the most, reads the most, like all those different things. So maybe picking out like 10 of your top people that are engaged in your, whether if your association is using, like I said, Elevate, you pick those like 10 people, run a report, and see if maybe you want to offer them 50% off for them to attend if they send out like 5 tweets, or just like a thank you for, or even just say we appreciate how much you are, helping us out and your, interactions with us and everything. So we would love to gift you this. Could you mind sharing this off? That type of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like we've heard that called like a social media strike force, or your Twitterati, right? So if you can really invite that core group of people who, one, they care, 2, they're hopefully already active, so they might have some amount of a following, and then 3, if you, like you said, you offer some type of incentive for them, or whether that's a discounted rate on their whether it's a continuing education course, or their ticket to the conference, or their membership, or something like that. But some people also do it just because they want to support the cause. If they're an active, passionate member and they really believe in the association, or they believe in the event for that matter. So
I want to talk about something. So hashtags. Let's talk about hashtags for a second.
Okay.
So I am a firm believer that events should have hashtags, and that should be shared amongst everybody and that type of thing. So have you seen anybody make a weird like mistake with hashtags, like use a hashtag that they shouldn't have used, that type of thing? So there's definitely research that goes into picking out your hashtag. And when you have to see that it's not already in use. One time I've seen something that it was somebody used a hashtag and it was linked to something in another country that had nothing to do with anything. Because a lot of times we'll run social walls for our clients, and we'll populate, and it's populated with hashtags and things like that. So you really have to make sure that the hashtag, if you're not going to sit there and moderate the social wall that updates every 1 or 2 minutes, you really have to make sure that if you're using a hashtag, it's something that makes sense. It's not too long, that it's not already in use, that it doesn't lead to something that's not appropriate to
Right.
anything? Or do you have any best practices? Or
Yeah, I mean, the things you just said for sure. And I have definitely encountered cases where they pick something not realizing that the same acronym or whatever was used by a different organization. Another thing that I've seen is confusion sometimes. If the official event hashtag is maybe not what would seem to be the most obvious version, people might just guess and assume it is something else. If the official one was trying to be the words written out, but everybody just associates the name with the acronym and start guessing it's acronym 2020 or whatever it might be. So I've definitely been at some events where there seem to be 3 hashtags emerging, and it's because people are just guessing. So I think there's some communication that goes into it, and also picking one that makes sense and seems obvious, so people don't just fill in the blank on their own.
Yeah.
Picking what platform you're really trying to go in on, it's pretty difficult to get like organic pickup across multiple different platforms. So that gets down to just knowing your audience, and if you have 1 or 2 particular social platforms where you're kind of invested in making a bet. I mean, if you have the resources to manage and simultaneously keep track of 4 different platforms, good on you. But most associations do not. And so generally it makes sense to pick the 1, at most 2, that you think your members are already using and active on.
Industry association. It's funny, when I got hired, I was one of the very first things that was told to me was that when I did a very popular hashtag for association chat is hashtag ASSN chat. And it was very clear to me to make sure I always make sure that ends there, so it doesn't accidentally say something.
Yeah. Yep.
That was drilled in my head. Now I'm like, let me just make sure the end's always there. So yeah, and also another thing is, just because you use that hashtag the year before, like if you do like let's say you did Feathr 2019, you can't necessarily know that Feathr 2020 is going to work. You really have to make sure, because you don't know if someone else has used that hashtag. It has been using it this year. So like I said, hashtag, people do I mean, I think it's great, especially if you're using a social wall to populate on your, it's a really good networking tool. But it definitely takes some research. You need to kind of plan that a little bit. And once you've identified it, I mean, I think that's something out of the gate you should be using in your marketing to get a chatter going prior to, because just using that hashtag can really.
That's what I would tie it back to, is having a goal too, right? Having something ideally you can measure, did this work or not at the end. So, is the goal of the hashtag to create FOMO for people who weren't there, so that maybe next year they're interested? And if that's the case, how do you measure success of that? Is it, are there calls to action or something where people who weren't there can engage? Is it just by volume? Is the goal just to have people at the event doing it to create some buzz during the event and have social walls, which is obviously a very good engagement mechanism for people at the event itself, and you don't really care about people who are outside of the event? I just think there's different ways to look at it, and I guess whatever it is, my final comment on it would just be have a goal and optimize around that, instead of just feeling like you're filling in a blank.
You said also having the goal of, like you said, what are you doing pre, during, and post? So do you have a pre, is it to build up buzz, like you said, and then during, like to promote speakers and things like that and networking events, and then afterwards, like you said, FOMO. It's definitely so.
Yeah, I mean, in this era of digital marketing, I just mean in general, you can track almost everything, and so I think that's a muscle that a lot of association marketing teams are flexing more and more, and I think that's a great trajectory to keep going on, is like continue to get better at being more data driven and measurable, and like, did this actually work or not? And it's okay for it to not work. That's measuring is still useful, and if it reveals it doesn't work, that's great. That should be viewed as like, oh, we learned something new, we can move on to something more effective, rather than being maybe afraid of measuring something that's been like, we do this every year, and then you finally measure it and realize what everyone suspected for a while, which is maybe it didn't really do that much. So I think that's already changing, and that's just the times we're in. But particularly as we come under pressure from a budget standpoint, and we're trying to do more with less, I think just measuring what's working and not is an important place to start. And digital just makes that so much easier than traditional marketing.
Really does. And it's like you said, it's less expensive too. You don't have paper you're paying for and different things like that. So you can allocate your money to different places, and digital marketing you may not have thought or didn't want to spend the money in before. So very cool. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time today, Aidan. We would love if anyone has any questions for Aidan, you can feel free to reach out to him. You can continue to leave a comment if you want to, and we'll make sure he sees it. You can visit his website at feathr.co. And any final words?
Yeah, I would just say we did just launch a podcast. So you're talking about podcasts earlier. Feathr just launched the Association Marketing Show. And so as far as we can tell, it is the only podcast that's specifically oriented towards the marketing and communications teams of associations. So that's every week or two, every 2 weeks. We have a new episode where we're bringing on people who are in director of marketing, VP of communications, those types of roles at associations. And just we'll have about 20 to 30-minute episodes talking about what works, what doesn't, very similar to what we just did here. So anyone who's interested in marketing communications and learning from your peers, Feathr just launched the Association Marketing Show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the usual spots. So
I'll definitely tune in. I like marketing. So thank you very much. Anyone would like some more information about CommPartners, feel free to email us at info@compartners.com or visit our website, compartners.com. Our next CommPartners conversation is December 3rd, and we hope to see everyone there. And thank you very much for your time today, Aidan.
Thank you, Rebecca. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.